Once upon a time in the village of Gera, there lived a couple that were both farmers. Mr. and Mrs. David were known to be very secretive. They had one charming daughter who was loved by many in the village because she was kind and hardworking. Kish enjoyed helping her parents in the farm, and from time to time she'd go to the forest to fetch firewood. At times she'd even go and fetch water from the stream. One day her mother sent her to fetch water from the stream, and as she drew water from the river, she heard some sound from the forest. There were whispers from the forest calling her name. Kish, Kish, please help me, please help me. Kish got scared and she ran with a pot of water only for it to break. When her mother saw her running without her pot of water, she asked her,
"My daughter, what is pursuing you?"
She hugged her mother and said,
"Mother, there were some strange voices coming from the forest, and they were calling my name. I got so scared I even dropped my pot of water as I was running away from it."
When her mother heard this, she took a pot of water and went to fetch water. She drew her water and waited for the whispers from the forest, but she didn't hear anything. She walked back home with her pot of water, and once she got home, she told her daughter,
"Kish, are you sick or are you hallucinating? Because I didn't hear any voice from the forest."
Mrs. David convinced Kish that she must have been hearing her own things, so the next morning, Mrs. David sent Kish to the stream to fetch water that will be used to do the dishes. Kish went to the stream, and as she bent down to fetch water, she heard the same voice calling, "Kish, Kish, please help me." Kish ran back home with a half-filled pot of water. Her mother saw her and said,
"Is it the same voices again?"
Kish answered, panting.
"Yes, Mother, I heard the same voices calling my name."
Her mother then told her,
"If you hear the same voice again, please follow it. This is the only way you'd manage to face your fears, and this is the only way you'd manage to overcome it."
Kish shook her head in agreement and said,
"Okay, Mother, I have heard you."
The next day, Kish went back to fetch water from the stream, and she heard the same voices calling her name. "Kish, Kish, please help me." Kish left her pot of water and followed the voice into the forest. She followed the voice until she got to a dry well in the forest. She looked deep in the well, but she could no longer hear the voices. She turned back to go home, only for her to meet a girl who looked exactly like her. She tried to run, but then the same voice said, "Kish, I'm your twin sister. I was killed and thrown into this well as a baby because the customs of this village did not allow anyone to have twins. My spirit has never rested, but now that I've seen you, I will rest. Go and tell our parents that I forgive them for what they did, and they will no longer live in fear." After the ghost finished talking, it disappeared, and Kish ran back home and told her parents about the ghost. A few years later, Mrs. David conceived again. The end. If you've enjoyed this story this far, please give it a like, subscribe, and share. Please drop a comment on the comment section telling me if you enjoyed the story, and tell me wherever you're watching me from for me to give you a shout out on the next episode of Wonder Tales by Julian.